The first snow of December drifted silently outside the cabin window. I sat in an old wooden chair wrapped in a thin blanket, staring at the frost creeping across the glass. The tiny stove struggled against the bitter cold, and every gust of wind rattled the walls as if winter itself wanted to come inside. At 70 years old, I never imagined I would spend my days like this. Especially not because of my own son. My name is Margaret Wilson. I was a retired schoolteacher, a widow, and a mother who had spent her entire life sacrificing for her only child, Daniel. After my husband died 15 years earlier, Daniel became my whole world. I worked extra tutoring jobs to help him through college. I sold my jewelry so he could start a business. I even took out loans to support him when his company nearly collapsed. Every time he needed help, I was there. And every time he promised things would get better. But promises are easy. Gratitude is harder. 3 months earlier, Daniel had arrived at my house wearing an expensive coat and driving a luxury SUV. "Mom," he said warmly, "you shouldn't be living alone anymore. Let me take care of you." His words touched my heart. For years I had longed to hear them. He explained that he had purchased a quiet cabin in the mountains where I could enjoy fresh air and peace. "It'll only be temporary," he assured me. "Just until I finish renovating a beautiful place for you near my family." I believed him, because mothers often believe what they want to hear. The next week he helped me pack. He handled all my paperwork too. "Just routine financial documents," he said. Without reading carefully, I signed them. Again, I trusted him. The cabin seemed charming when we first arrived. But after Daniel left, reality appeared. The roof leaked. The heating system barely worked. The nearest town was 20 miles away. There was no reliable transportation. Days became lonely. Weeks became painful. Then one afternoon I received a bank notification. My account balance was nearly zero. Confused, I called the bank. The representative explained that most of my savings had been legally transferred to Daniel. My hands trembled. The papers I had signed had given him access to nearly everything. Over $200,000. The savings my husband and I had built over an entire lifetime. I called Daniel immediately. When he answered, his voice sounded irritated. "What now, Mom? What happened to my savings?" Silence. Then a sigh. "I needed the money. You took everything. It wasn't doing anything sitting there." I felt as if someone had punched me in the chest. "Daniel, that was my retirement. You don't need that much money at your age." At your age. Those words hurt more than the theft itself. "I trusted you. You'll be fine." Then he hung up. I cried harder that night than I had cried at my husband's funeral. Not because of the money. Because I realized my son no longer saw me as his mother. Only as a resource. The following weeks were difficult. Food became scarce. The cold grew worse. Sometimes I wondered if anyone would notice if I simply disappeared. Then one snowy morning, a knock sounded at the cabin door. I opened it cautiously. A young woman stood outside. She looked familiar. "Mrs. Wilson." "Yes, my name is Emma." Then I recognized her. Emma had been one of my students 25 years earlier. She immediately hugged me. "I've been looking for you." I invited her inside. As we talked, Emma explained that she had become a successful attorney. Years ago, she said, my encouragement had changed her life. "You were the first person who believed in me," she said. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked around the freezing cabin. "You live here?" I nodded. She asked more questions. Eventually the entire story came out. The cabin, the money, Daniel, everything. The expression on Emma's face changed from sadness to determination. "May I see those documents you signed?" I still had copies. She carefully reviewed them. Then she smiled slightly. "Interesting. What is it?" "Your son may have made a serious mistake." For the first time in months, I felt a tiny spark of hope. Over the next several weeks, Emma investigated everything. She discovered that Daniel had transferred the money into several risky business investments. Even worse, he had misrepresented parts of the paperwork. Certain signatures had been altered. Several legal requirements had not been properly followed. What Daniel believed was a perfect plan was actually full of problems. Emma assembled a legal case. Meanwhile, she arranged for me to move into a comfortable apartment near town. For the first time in months, I slept in warmth. I almost felt human again. Then came the court hearing. Daniel arrived looking confident. He barely glanced at me. His lawyers seemed certain they would win. But Emma had prepared thoroughly. Document after document exposed irregularities. Witness after witness confirmed suspicious actions. The judge listened carefully. By the end of the hearing, Daniel's confidence had vanished. Several weeks later, the ruling arrived. Most of my savings would be returned. Additional penalties were imposed, and Daniel faced serious financial consequences. When he learned the outcome, he requested to meet me. I almost refused, but eventually I agreed. We met at a small cafe. For the first time, he looked tired. Older. Defeated. I lost everything, he said quietly. I stirred my tea. I know. Why did you do this? The question shocked me. Why did I do this? The lawsuit. I looked directly into his eyes. No, Daniel. The real question is why you did what you did. For several moments neither of us spoke. Then something unexpected happened. My son began to cry. Not the fake tears of manipulation. Real tears. The kind I hadn't seen since he was a little boy. I don't know what happened to me, he whispered. I kept wanting more. Money. Status. Success. Each achievement only made him greedier. Until eventually he stopped seeing people. Even family. As human beings. I became someone I don't recognize. For the first time in years, he sounded honest. I didn't excuse him. I didn't forget. Some wounds take time. But I listened. Months passed. Daniel slowly began rebuilding his life. Not his business. His character. He started volunteering at local shelters. He sold luxury possessions to repay debts. He spent time with his wife and children. And little by little, he earned back pieces of trust. Not because he demanded forgiveness. Because he accepted responsibility. One spring afternoon, nearly a year later, Daniel drove me to a beautiful house overlooking a lake. What is this? I asked. He smiled. It's yours. I stared at him. I can't accept this. You can. He handed me the keys. I finally understand something, Mom. What? Everything valuable I ever had came from your sacrifices. Tears filled my eyes. Not because of the house. Because for the first time in many years, I saw my son again. The real one. The boy I had raised. The surprise waiting for Daniel had never been the lawsuit. It had never been the court ruling or the lost money. The greatest surprise was discovering that greed had not completely destroyed him. Life had given him one final lesson. And somehow, through pain and consequences, he learned it. As the sun reflected across the lake, I realized something important. Money can be stolen, comfort can disappear, even trust can be broken. But kindness planted in someone's heart can survive for years. Sometimes decades. And when the time is right, it finds its way home again.